I stumbled upon the terrifying TikTok videos that showed haunted moments live. I never should have opened that door. I was just scrolling, like any other night, a boredom-induced trance sparked by flickering shadows in my dimly lit room. My friends were hyping a new channel supposedly started by a group of urban explorers. They claimed to stumble upon ghostly encounters. At first, I scoffed, dismissing it as just another ploy to rake in views. The moment I hit play, chills prickled down my spine. The screen buzzed with static, a backdrop of eerie, moonlit streets shrouded in mist. The camera panned, revealing cracked sidewalks, a dilapidated mansion looming ahead. I could almost smell the dampness in the air, thick and musty, like the remnants of forgotten stories. My heart raced. I leaned in closer, drawn by the promise of the unknown. "Did you hear that?" A voice whispered from my phone. My ears perked up. I glanced over my shoulder, the silence in my room thickening like a fog. This wasn't scripted. It was alive, raw, electric. The camera weaved through dark hallways, flickering lights casting ominous shadows that danced on the walls, as if something was waiting just beyond the reach of the camera's lens. As I watched, strange noises punctuated the empty air, a creaking floorboard, a soft whispering, breathy and distant, as if the house itself was alive. My skin tingled with foreboding. Then came the moment that sealed my fate. An object seemed to move of its own accord, a chilling dislocation in the fabric of reality. One instant it was there, the next it was gone. I gasped, my heart pounding in my chest like a wild drum, a lump forming in my throat. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Why was I still watching? But the thrill was intoxicating. The screen flickered again, and I could swear I caught a glimpse of something behind the camera, a figure lurking just out of sight, shrouded in darkness. My breath hitched. I needed to know more, so I tapped deeper into the video, heart racing, fingers trembling. Suddenly, without warning, the lights went out in my living room. Darkness enveloped me. The sudden silence felt tangible, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. I could barely make out shapes through the abyss. The only sound was the pounding of my heart reverberating in the stillness. I grabbed my phone, the bright screen illuminating my anxious face. That's when I heard a low, guttural laugh echoing from my hallway. I froze. My heart was thundering in my ears. I shouldn't have opened that door. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air felt thick as I stood frozen, my phone's light flickering uncertainly as I strained to listen beyond the chilling laughter. This couldn't be happening, not in my own home. Every horror movie cliché ran wild in my mind, coiling around me like a serpent ready to crush. I turned slowly, my pulse racing as shadows twisted into grotesque shapes, whispering promises of dread. "Hello," I called out, voice trembling, barely more than a whisper swallowed by the oppressive darkness. No reply came, but the laughter echoed again, now closer, a malevolent presence inching toward me. I could feel its something ancient and craving, stirring in the corners of my mind, igniting terror. With shaking hands and a willful determination, I flipped the camera mode on my phone to record. If I was going to face whatever lurked in the shadows, I needed proof. My light danced across the room, illuminating the furniture in swift flashes, casting elongated shadows that seemed to writhe independently, disconnected from their owners. Just as I cleared my throat to call again, the light flickered violently, and a cold gust of wind rushed past, as if something had brushed by me, teasing my skin. "Get out," a voice rasped, raw and tortured, cutting through the silence like a knife. My heart dropped into my stomach. It wasn't just a figment of my imagination. Someone, or something, wanted me gone, but a morbid curiosity drove me. I needed to know the source of the sound, not just for myself, but for the thrill hidden in each tremor. What if this was just an elaborate prank? Eyes narrowed, I moved toward the source of the laughter, the hallway stretching endlessly before me like a dark abyss. As I stepped cautiously forward, I could feel an unfamiliar weight in the air, almost liquid in consistency, wrapping around me, pulling me inward. My throat tightened as I reached the threshold of the hallway where the faintest outline of light seeped from the slightly ajar door at its end. The air reeked of something decaying, a musty stench that clawed at my instincts. The laughter transformed into a series of disjointed whispers, overlapping and frantic, as if multiple souls were trying to break through at once. "Turn back," they urged, the chorus of voices overlapping until they coalesced in a deafening crescendo. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment, battling against the suffocating dread that enveloped me. That I forced them open and stepped closer to the door, the hinges creaking menacingly in defiance. I paused, the air charged with a supernatural energy, waves of dread washing over me, pulsating through the very ground, as if the house itself was alive and aware of my presence. Summoning every shred of courage, I pushed the door open. The light inside flickered erratically, revealing a room that looked impossibly larger than it had any right to be, stretching into a darkness at the far end. A chilling tableau awaited me, a circular array of photographs pinned to an ancient, peeling wall, each one depicting various individuals caught in moments of sheer terror, eyes wide, faces twisted in agonized despair. Their gazes seemed to bore into my soul, the whispers intensified, now not just urging but pleading, don't stay," but before I could react, the floor beneath me groaned ominously, and the door slammed shut behind me with a force that echoed like thunder. I spun around, panic surging through my veins, heart racing as I tried the handle desperately locked, as if the house had agreed to play its final game. Suddenly, one of the photographs flickered, a ghostly blue light illuminating the apparition in the picture. It broke away from the confines of the frame, slipping fluidly into the air, morphing slowly into the very figure from the video, the shadow that had taunted me through my screen. It stood before me, an amalgamation of tortured souls, each face a portrait of misery twisted into something incomprehensible. With a voice that dripped malice and sorrow, it hissed, "Now you belong to us," and with that, the walls around me began to pulse and breathe, the air thick and suffocating. I stumbled back as fingers reached out from the paintings, grasping at my limbs, pulling me into the depths of a horror far beyond what I had ever encountered, the room dimming to blackness. Then I felt the ground give way beneath my feet. I was falling, plummeting into an abyss of despair, only to crash sharply into the other side, landing in a nightmarish void where shadows twisted and writhed, their whispers growing louder, beckoning for me to join their eternal torment. As I looked around, terror pooling in my gut, I realized I wasn't alone. Dark silhouettes gathered in the periphery of my vision, each one with that same expression of terror. They reached for me, eyes pleading as the whispers grew into a deafening cacophony. The words were clear now, chilling to my core. "You can't escape. You chose to open the door," and just as I felt their fingers brush against my pale skin, I was yanked downwards, plunging deeper into a darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. At that moment, a flash of brilliance erupted around me, a final shred of hope before everything went black. But just before the darkness consumed me, the vivid light unveiled something beyond the void. An all too familiar TikTok video interface began to materialize, the signature TikTok logo eerily glowing against the abyss. The caption read, "Live. Watch as we uncover the truth of what lies beyond the door and deeper within." I could hear the unmistakable sound of that haunting laughter crackling through the air again, signaling the unending horror that awaited any who dared to watch. The silence in the void was deafening, a silence that resonated with an echoing dread, punctuated only by the throbbing pulse of the darkness that surrounded me. I felt the weight of the terror strangling the breath from my lungs, the laughter, a twisted symphony merging with the faint sounds of unease emanating from the glowing interface. Instinct urged me to turn away, to flee from the malevolent display that burned in the darkness, but my feet felt anchored in place, glued to the dismal ground beneath me. The realization washed over me like a chill. This was no ordinary TikTok livestream. This was an invitation into a vortex of horror, drawing in souls, feeding on fear. My heart raced, caught in a battle between madness and morbid fascination. Get out while you can. The pleadings flowed from 1,000 different mouths, shadows curling around them like a smoke, weaving in and out of focus. Each voice dripped with desperation, spiraling into frantic terror, universal in its urgency. The interface shimmered, pulling me closer as if its light hungered for my attention. I could see faint silhouettes dancing within the video frame, figures trapped in an eternal loop of horror, their eyes wide, mouths agape in silent screams. My own reflection flickered upon the screen, an expression of wide-eyed horror staring back at me, begging for escape. Then a sudden jolt ripped through the darkness, snapping my focus back. I lurched forward, grasping at the data stream, clawing to control this chaos. My fingers grazed the screen, and the moment I did, a surge of energy rippled through me, awakening something deep within the void. The figures in the video began to writhe, their pain electrifying the atmosphere like a storm gathering strength, each contorted face merging into a grotesque tableau of suffering. The laughter returned, echoing endlessly, mocking my plight as it reverberated through the empty expanse. Shadows danced beneath the surface of the stream, swirling closer, their soft whispers rasping. "Join us, lose yourself," each syllable dripped with seduction, promising release from the terror that clutched my sanity. Desperation clawed at me, crystallizing into adrenaline. I had to unlock the origin of this dark live stream before it devoured me whole. Fighting back the overwhelming urge to flee, I focused my gaze on the caption that glowed like a haunting beacon. "Live. Watch as we uncover the truth of what lies beyond the door," the words repeated, a mantra causing my pulse to quicken. Turning my attention away from the abyss and toward the virulent stream, I whispered, "What door? What truth?" My voice echoed within the void, a lone cry against the swell of fear. With a sudden clarity, I felt the boundaries between worlds ripple. Fragments of other TikTok videos flashed across the screen, each a portal to different rooms in the infinite house of horror. The same photographs from before swirled in and out of view, portraits of agony that told stories of those long lost, each moment captured as they begged for liberation. From the corner of my eye, one video caught my attention, a dimly lit room peppered with shadows that slithered along the walls. A shuddering breath escaped my lips as I saw a figure slumped against the wall, staring into darkness, their own phone flickering erratically. It was the last person I had seen before it pulled me in. My heart raced, desperation clawing my throat. "No, I can save you." I reached toward the live stream, fingers brushing against the cold surface of the void, seeking to connect. The moment I did, the room exploded in a flash of blinding light. A sharp cry punctured the air, and I was pulled into the vortex with an unholy force. Thrust into the very video I had glimpsed. It was instant chaos upon entry, a swirling, disorienting confrontation of shadows and despair. The figure I had glimpsed slumped against the wall was not immediately recognizable, a faceless soul cloaked in agony, their eyes reflecting the same reality I feared. In a split second, we locked gazes, souls intertwining in a surge of harrowing recognition, but the laughter grew louder, maddening, enveloping us in a shriek of sinister glee. "She chose," it cried, multiple voices celebrating, the shadows recoiling and spinning around us like a cyclone, feeding on our anguish. Suddenly, a burst of clarity pierced through the chaos. An old click of a door echoed in my mind, a door left ajar, a gateway to the darkness. The realization hit me like a knife, and just as I was about to scream the warning, the world began to fracture. Not just the video, everything, the floor, the walls, the very fabric of reality started to dissolve, revealing pinpricks of dark void beyond. The swirling laughter reached a fever pitch, and in that moment, before I could even scream, it all unraveled. We were falling, again, but this time, I could feel the ghostly hands reach out, not to drag me further down, but to pull me back. "Don't let it take you," echoed from the shadows as the figures began to merge into one final grasp of desperate solidarity. And just as the ground beneath us shattered into nothingness, I caught sight of a new figure emerging in the chaos, illuminated by an eerie glow. A camera in their hand, broadcasting the terror unfolding for an audience, a new iteration of the ever-hungry TikTok livestream. The figure lifted their head, a perfect reflection of my terrified expression caught in the moment, eyes wide with realization, a dark smile creeping slowly across their lips. You see? It's never over. With a jolt, a new notification chimed in my mind, an alert tinged with dread. New live. The next victim awaits. Watch now. We were just beginning. Blood pulsed in my ears as I grasped the edges of reality, my heart a war drum echoing inside my chest. The chaos was unyielding, the shadows writhing around me like serpents intent on dragging me toward an unseen fate. The new figure, a warped version of myself, lingered just out of reach, their malevolent smile unraveling whatever frail tether of hope I clung to. Watch now. They taunted, the words slithering through the air like smoke. I was aware now, conscious of the eyes beyond this horror, the ones glued to their screens, waiting for the next flick of terror. I wanted to scream, to pierce the veil between this place and the outside world, but nothing would come except the throaty gasps of another soul lost within the fray. The darkness coalesced, forming a heavy mist that enveloped me, and I felt the pull of unseen hands tightly wrapping around my wrists, threatening to integrate me into this diabolical spectacle. I squinted against the shadows, desperate to spot the luminescent screen that had ensnared me, but it was obscured by the grotesque shapes clawing for attention. Then I noticed the room was shifting, walls contorting, surfaces sweating darkness. I could hear the whimpering voices of others, intermixed with the laughter, wailing out their horror from a million fractured moments. Their cries became a cacophony of recognition, for they were not merely bystanders. They were past victims trapped in a loop, each one echoed on some ghastly platform. With a sudden, primal instinct to survive, I lunged forward, crashing against the unseen wall of the video stream. The world spiraled into kaleidoscopic colors, greens and reds blending with the inky black highlighting, faces reflected in torment. Each one called to me, their hollow eyes pleading for release, an eternal reflection of despair that hit like a thunderclap against my sanity. I turned to face the new figure, their mirth growing sinister as if they fed upon my rising dread. You want to save them? They mocked, their voice slick and feral. Here, I'll make it easy for you. In an instant, shadowy tendrils lashed out, wrapping around my body, and I screamed as they pulled me toward the others. I was yanked from the edge of the horrors, wrenched back to see their forms sharpen into focus, souls distorted, mouths frozen in eternal terror. The sudden burst of clarity surged within me as I understood their suffering could also become the key to my salvation. They were stacked one on another, stacked like wooden dolls, each one a vessel of despair, layered atop a history of forgotten fears. Each member of the audience clutched their phones, enraptured, oblivious to the very real horror unfolding right in front of them. Stop, I gasped, suddenly desperate for their attention, for my voice to pierce the veil of this mindless loop. It was now or never. Listen to me. But the laughter, sharp and cold, ripped through the noise. The figure who mirrored me raised their phone, the screen flickering with malevolent energy, casting an eerie glow over the assembled shadows. Don't you understand? They taunted, their tone dripping with malice. It's their belief that feeds the darkness. They need to feel alive by watching your despair. As if on cue, the cackling intensified, mixing with surges of powerful shadows that wrapped tighter around me. There was no escaping the truth. They were rapturously absorbed in this spectacle, breathless, waiting for the crescendo of my demise. But then, in the depths of sheer horror, a flicker of rebellion ignited within me. I reached out, grasping to share my strength with the trapped souls. Fight! I shouted, pushing my will into the thin space, separating our fates as though my words could shift the fabric of despair. The shadows halted, stilled, as if momentarily startled by the force of my voice. For the briefest moment, I noticed a shimmer in their hollowed eyes, the faintest echo of recognition that we had been more than mere puppets in this waking nightmare. But just as hope warmed the icy tendrils of darkness, the figure opposite me cackled, their gaze piercing through. Futility is the truth, they sneered. You shall remain lost, like a marionette severed from its strings. Then the walls began to moan, violently shifting around us. A cacophony of whispers rose, drowning in the encroaching dissonance, as the figure loomed closer, brandishing their phone, directing the audience to feast on our despair. It was a trap, a shiny end that glinted with malevolence. The darkness spiraled onward, the boundaries fracturing further and further, the door I sensed ominously within this void gaping wider, threatening to siphon all hope from within. And as I stood, summoning every ounce of resolve to ignite a fire in the faces around me, a final flickering of my own spirit wavered. The screen behind the figure pulsed with terrible urgency. A new live notification bloomed, beckoning viewers to dive deeper into this dark abyss, an invitation wrenching me toward an inevitable oblivion. But just as that darkness burst wide open, I realized the audience was now collectively shifting their attention. I turned my gaze upon them, feeling the insatiable greed flood their hollow expressions. "No!" I screamed, and the world around me shattered like glass, fragments of my very essence spiraling into the maw of an inconceivable darkness. And then, amid the hellish laughter, I fell through the void, bracing for impact, bracing for the unknown, wondering if I would ever escape this endless cycle. As everything faded into the black, the last thing I heard was the figure's voice, dripping with malice. "You will never escape now, everyone will watch you." A chilling text notification glowed in the void, sending a shiver down my spine. "You're next." As my essence coalesced from the fractured abyss, I opened my eyes to a chillingly familiar setting, the darkness stretching endlessly around me, a cavernous expanse filled with shadows that writhed like serpents. The air was thick with a moisture that clung to my skin, igniting memories of my previous trauma. It was impossible to decipher whether I had merely returned to the harrowing echo of my initial despair, or if something even more sinister was now afoot. That I could hear the crowd, their insatiable appetite for fear pulsing through the darkness like a malevolent heartbeat. Glimmers of light flickered in their eyes as they remained glued to the screens in their hands, their voices a distant hum, blending into a malicious symphony. It was then I realized the twisted nature of what I faced. These were not merely spectators. They were an entrenched audience longing for my downfall, their pleasure coiling around my spirit like binding chains. Suddenly, I noticed something moving in the Foga figure, wrapped in shadows, but shimmering with a disorienting flicker of light. Batting against the veil of despair, I moved closer, the warmth illuminating the surrounding darkness. With a flick of my wrist, I steeled myself and summoned the courage to confront whatever awaited me. As I approached, the figure began to sharpen, revealing a distorted face previously familiar but twisted beyond recognition. It was an amalgamation of my own likeness and the malevolent mirage that had taunted me. "Welcome back," it hissed, voice slicing through the tension like glass. "I see you missed the show." What had once been my doppelganger was now a shape woven from nightmare's grotesque patchwork of victims' tormented expressions layered atop one another in a nightmarish play. "Do you not wonder what we show them?" The twisted entity glided closer, eyes glinting, shadows whispering secrets of suffering into my mind. That I staggered back, my heart racing as I searched for an escape. "You're feeding them, feeding on the agony. Your performance feeds this madness, and we are forced to enact it," I cried, tears threatening to break free as I fought against the amalgam of fear that threatened to drag me under. With each word, its form shifted, morphing into faces I recognized, friends I had lost, spirits evoked from the deepest recesses of memory. They wore expressions of terror so vivid, I felt their pain echoing within my own heart. "Listen to them," my doppelganger urged, extending one claw-like finger toward the gravitational danger encircling us. "They want to show your show. You are the star, after all. Stop. Why can't I break this cycle?" I wailed, feeling the icy fingers of despair wrapping around my lungs, choking me. All at once, the swirling mass of spectators erupted in applause, their enthusiasm echoing through the void like thunder. My heart quickened with fearful recognition. They were reveling in every anguished moment, and I was trapped in an endless replay of my worst fears being projected as entertainment, all for their twisted delight. I longed to shatter this cycle, but there was no way out. I felt my mind fracturing under the weight of it all. Then suddenly, a loud crack pierced the silence, and the ground beneath me trembled. The ethereal space I occupied began to fracture, jagged reflections of reality breaking through the illusion. "They're losing their grip," I shouted, as a whirlwind of energy surged through the reeling atmosphere, threatening to spill chaos upon the audience watching in quiet horror. But my doppelganger stepped back, fear flashing briefly in its now contorted features as the cracks widened further. "No," it screeched, clawing at the shadows that held us. "You can't escape that easily. I've been waiting for this moment." With a great lurch, shadows began to coalesce around me, threatening to seal my fate, tugging at every ounce of my being as despair sang its haunting lullaby. Time slowed to an agonizing crawl, and I grasped wildly at the fractures, trying to pry them open further, yearning to reclaim my freedom. And that's when the air shifted. Palpable anticipation crackling around us. A figure emerged from the darkness, cloaked in an aura of malevolent light, their voice dripping with sinister glee. "You can run, but you will never find solace," the newcomer hissed, stepping into my line of sight. "We're going to show them something far more delicious, a true performance of despair." My breath hitched as I felt an icy tendril slither around my leg, pulling me toward the edge of the void. The audience erupted in applause, hungry eyes gleaming with the promise of new horror. The walls trembled. The cracked space expanded me past, intertwining with the malevolence of the crowd that I in that moment. I felt an ultimate revelation that left my soul teetering on the precipice of insanity. The pulsing energy surged brightly, and everything began to slip beyond my grasp. Every chilling certainty yanked away as a new screen activated, broadcasting my unraveling life, ready for the world's insatiable glare. And just before the darkness consumed me, a solitary whisper sliced through the chaos, echoing in my mind. "They will never turn away from the fear of knowing that you are next." As the darkness churned and twisted around me, I clung on to a fraying thread of desperation, my heart pounding recklessly against my ribcage. I felt the presence of the malevolent figure loom closer, the air thickening with palpable dread as memories of past torment danced like malevolent puppeteers in my mind. Each moment, a dagger twisting deeper into my consciousness, reached a terrifying crescendo as I stood ready to confront whatever nightmare awaited me. "Show them," the figure hissed, its voice dripping with the venom of countless tormented souls. "Show them everything you are afraid of." My resolve quaked against the onslaught of horror, but I couldn't allow myself to become a puppet in this grotesque performance any longer. The voices of the audience erupted around me, a cacophony of anticipation, each cheer drenched in sickening excitement. They hungered for my fear, and somehow, I was going to take that power back. With all the energy I could summon, I concentrated, attempting to wield the darkness swirling like a tempest around me. A spark ignited within, a flicker of a memory worth fighting for, the warmth of friendship, of love lost but not forgotten. I envisioned the faces of those who stood beside me, igniting a flicker of hope amid the crushing void. "You want a show?" I shouted into the writhing shadows. "You'll get one." The walls of darkness recoiled, the entity before me screeching in frustration as I forced the darkness to yield, my resolve hardening like steel. But with every flicker of light I conjured, I could feel the audience turning restless, their craving for despair sharpening, hungry for the carnage they'd come to witness. With a single thought, I ripped open a passage, dragging a kaleidoscope of memories into the swirling abyss. A tapestry of the past surged forth, capturing images of laughter, warmth, and camaraderie, a long-lost spark shining defiantly against the abyssal despair. I could feel each face stir within the void, and with that stirring came new horror, churning forth like a nightmarish tide. But just as I thought I had taken control, the malevolent figure pulsed with dark amusement, revealing a truth that sent icy dread skittering across my spine. "Your memories have weight," it cackled, watching as I struggled to maintain my fragile grip on reality. "But every revelation bears its own burden. Remind them of their failures, and yours." The audience began to switch, faces shifting from entertained spectators to grotesque mirrors of my own guilt and sorrow. They weren't passive witnesses. They were reflections of every failure, every regret I had buried deep to protect my sanity. The atmosphere thickened, suffocating under the weight of betrayal and heartache. "Stop," I pleaded, slashing the air with my hands. But the shadows pulsed like a living tapestry before memories begun emerging as projected horrors. My sister's smile replacing with anguish, friends torn apart while I stood helpless, Moments of solace twisted into macabre dances of despair. The darkness fed swiftly on the revelations, and my projected self screamed as memories exploded into chaotic fragments, the audience gasping with horror and glee that I could feel myself slipping away again, my very essence teetering on the brink. Shadows clung fiercely, squeezing the breath from my lungs as the cacophony of haunting laughter spiraled out of control. There was no mercy among the specters that danced in the void. They reveled in the anguish of truth unspooled. Just as I thought it was over, the space shifted once more, the shadowed amalgamation of my past now pulsating with life. Their hollow eyes locked onto mine. You wanted to escape, my twisted echo laughed. But now you have invited us all into your deepest fears. This isn't a performance anymore. This is your reality. And with that, the air exploded with blinding energy. As light crackled like lightning, the very fabric of the world vibrated, shattering the audience's rapture. Dimensions collided, dragging me into a whirlpool of horror, the boundary between nightmare and reality disintegrating like ash in the wind that I in the haze of swirling chaos. A final figure emerged, me own trembling reflection, eyes wide with terror, mirroring the very fear I had tried to bury. It stepped forward, the gathered energy coiling around it like a living serpent. Your truth was never enough, it whispered, its voice a sickening echo of my own. They want to witness the moment you break. And as the darkness threatened to swallow everything whole, I realized in horror I wasn't just fighting for my life. I was racing against time to prevent that figure from becoming the last lingering echo of what I once was. Just as the final wave struck, a blood-curdling scream pierced through the darkness. Do you hear that? Everyone is waiting for the final act, and they will know the shock of your ultimate undoing. The air crackled with energy, and my heart raced, pounding against my ribs like an incessant drum, urging me to escape the increasing madness enveloping me. I felt the weight of the audience's anticipation, their insatiable thirst for my despair pulsating through the veils of time and memory. And yet, there I stood, a trembling soul ensnared within my own narrativian unintended performer in this nightmarish pantomime. End it. I screamed into the abyss, my voice swallowed by the howling wind reminiscent of anguished howls echoing through the cold night air. But there was no response. Only the mocking ripples of laughter that echoed around me, pushing the encroaching shadows closer. My surroundings shifted again, as the audience's gasps crescendoed into a single chord of dread. It wasn't mere entertainment to them. It was a feast, and I was about to become the main course. Out from the chaotic darkness, they emerged a grotesque parade of the lost, twisted back into life from the recesses of my broken memories. Only now, they were devoid of their former humanity, a menagerie of suffering souls burdened by the weight of my inaction. Their eyes, once familiar and warm, were now cold voids, reflecting a reality that was darker than I'd ever imagined. Welcome back, a voice slithered between the air, warm and soothing yet chillingly discordant. It was a voice I recognized all too well, me own, yet fractured and warped by pain. Do you remember us? The faces you turned away? The hands you let slip into the abyss? I took a step backward, a primal instinct surging through me to flee even deeper into the shadows. And they advanced, said me lost sister, my abandoned friends, each figure cast in a grotesque shadow of what they once were, their eyes hollowed out by anguish and resentment. Each step they took reverberated through me like a gunshot. An echo of guilt ricocheted deep within my soul, and oh, I tried to save you. I pleaded, my voice quivering as panic constricted my throat. But it was futile, as they melded into a swirling miasma, their anguished faces blurring into one another, an odious tapestry of despair that pressed upon me like a tangible weight. I was helpless. The voice of my reflection cut through the despair, its tone mocking yet mournful. Helpless? You could have acted. You could have given them what they needed. And now, they are here, drawn to you like moths to a dying flame. And just as you chose to abandon them, so shall you receive your reckoning at their hands. While crept up my throat, and I gasped as the world around me twisted, the phantom forms shifting like shadows caught in the grip of a violent storm. Muffled echoes arose, whispers weaving in and out of focus, haunting remnants of laughter mingled with anguished cries. With every breath, I could feel their palpable presence. A suffocating urgency wrapped itself around my throat like a noose. "Look at what you have wrought," my reflection shrieked, its visage flickering with a kaleidoscope of torment. The boundary between us shattered, and suddenly, I was not just an observer but an unwilling participant in their despair. "You will feel every ounce of sorrow you left behind." And just as I thought the darkness would envelop me, a new horror spiraled from the shadows. Storm clouds of heavy dread darkened the air. Whispers morphed into cries, and I was dragged back to a moment I thought lost to time. The night my sister disappeared, swallowed by the darkness of my inaction. It replayed before me, sharp and agonizing, every detail excruciatingly vivid. The shattering glass of her last phone call echoed in my ears, the desperate cries for help leaving her lips as I stood paralyzed, the specter of regret rising like bile in my throat. "Remember her?" The darkness breathed, slithering into my mind. "You were there, but you let the darkness take her. Now it comes back to collect." My sister's face hovered before me, wreathed in tears and shadow, her outstretched hand trembling in that moment of freezing time. I felt the icy grip of her anguish intertwining with my own heart, the horror of suspension crawling under my skin. "Help me," she cried, but the words morphed into a shriek, filling my mind with the oppressive weight of inevitability. The specters of my past began to close in, pressing against me, their voices crescendoing until they drowned out every thought. "You abandoned us. You will join us now," I screamed, a desperate attempt to alter the course of this nightmarish frenzy. But then the walls of the void exploded around me. Shards of glass and fragmented memories flew, and I was thrust into a chasm of blinding blackness. My naivete had opened a portal deeper than any I could have imagined, unraveling layers of haunting shadows that grasped at me, clawing for entrance into my very soul. And just when I thought I was done, when it felt as if the phantoms were ready to swallow me whole, a piercing chill sliced through the air, accompanied by an agonizingly familiar voice cutting through the din of despair. "Help me." It was her voice, yet closer, sharper. "You're not alone. I'm trapped, but I can't fight it alone. You must make a choice." With the breath knocked from my lungs, my heart raced once more. Fractured reality swirled around me, constricting like a tightening vice. There, against the swirling chaos, I realized I stood at a precipice, and my sister's fate was intertwined with mine. The audience roared in anticipation, as if the very walls of the void were washing with their desire for blood. Time hung suspended, and then suddenly everything went silent. An eerie hush cloaked the expanse, leaving behind the remaining resonance of my heart beating ferociously against the encroaching void. "This is your chance," the haunting echo whispered, hanging in the air like a suspended blade. "Will you save her, or will you let the dark take you both?" And as an unholy light began to flicker on the horizon of despair, I realized the darkness was more sentient than I had ever understood. It was alive, awaiting my answer and ready to unleash the horror of my choice upon the world. The oppressive silence shattered abruptly, overwhelmed by a cacophony of chilling whispers that climbed into a fever pitch. Fear coiled tightly within my chest, the pounding of my heart like a distressed metronome counting down to some unspeakable fate. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, the sound echoing into the void that pressed against me, suffocating yet electric with an insatiable hunger. "Choose," came the voice, clearer now, resonating with malice yet threaded with an agonizing urgency, as if it yearned for some long-sought resolution. "You can save her, or you can save yourself." In that moment, I could almost feel her presence, my sister adrift, desperately fighting against the sinister forces trying to pull her into the abyss. But in turn, I sensed the cold grip tightening around me, the ghosts of my past echoing their discontent, and I struggled against the torrent of memories clawing for my attention. Each memory of laughter, joy, and warmth now twisted, reformed into manifestations of anguish, pulling me into their cyclone of despair. The audience around me pulsed and swelled, their anticipation a nightmarish breath that enveloped the scene, consuming all light and hope. They thrummed with sinister energy, eager to see which side I would choose, the side of salvation or the suffocating comfort of despair. "It's a simple choice," the voice retorted mockingly. Save her or condemn her. Overwhelmed, I stumbled backward, the weight of the choice crashing down upon me like a stone. There had to be a way to save us both. Surely this torment was not your typical scenario with a binary outcome. My sister was real. Her cries for help echoed louder than the whispers of the damned surrounding me. I can't do this alone. I screamed into the suffocating void. They will decide your fate. A low, rumbling voice threatened, sending a chill racing down my spine. The shadows around me pulsed with sentience, a dark energy surging forward, reaching toward me with grasping hands. The specters of my past spilled into chaotic formations, friends lost to time, family members I had wronged, each face twisted in pain, inherited from choices I had failed to take. Their fates lingered on the edge of the void, restless and relentless. I want to save her, I cried, desperation blooming into a scream that reverberated against the walls of the ever-darkening cavern. But the walls only echoed silence, laughing maliciously at my suffering. And just then, the air crackled again, thickening with palpable dread. My surroundings began to warp and twist, distorting reality to reflect my inner turmoil like a funhouse mirror. I felt their anguish flooding inside me, every choice I'd made or hadn't made binding me into their sobering tapestry of torment. The vision slammed into my mind, a future where both I and my sister were swallowed by darkness, where heedless choices left us empty husks drifting in that endless void. Or, I had the possibility if I let go of the past I had clung to so tightly, I might scorch the tethering bonds of despair. An impossible choice weighed heavier against the haunting cries of every soul I had failed. Suddenly, a scream pierced through the thrumming shadows. It was unmistakably my sister's. Listen to the darkness, it knows what it wants. Help me. Another sharp gasp echoed as the phantoms pressed closer, their grotesque faces twisting in ghastly anticipation. They swayed like trees in a storm, hungry and expectant, waiting for me to break. Time itself felt elastic, stretching before me as I wrestled with the decision. Shadows coalesced around me, filling the air with the stench of decay. The entity that seemed to control them watched with eager, hollow eyes, glimmering with unholy delight. Your choice has power, it whispered sensuously, a seductive hiss curling around my consciousness. And amidst this whirlwind of horror, a thunderous boom suddenly erupted, shaking the ground beneath me. A fissure split the darkness wide open, revealing a blinding light that beckoned to me with an undefined warmth. My heart raced, hope clawing its way back into my blood, wrestling against the impending dread. Choose now. The sinister voice erupted, commanding, shattering the moment like glass. That I glanced back at the shimmering rift. Was salvation possible, or would that light lead us deeper into despair? A paradox wrapped in enigma? And with that flicker of hope, regret surged like a tidal wave. Crushing realization swallowed me whole. Leave, I shouted to the spectral figures, my screams slicing through the torment. Leave her alone. But as I turned back toward the glowing void, the light shattered, revealing not freedom but horror bound in flesh. The dark entity had transformed, assuming a monstrous form, a mirror reflecting all the anguish I'd witnessed. My sister's voice wailed again, echoing through the darkness. Please, don't leave me. A claw shot forward, icy and jagged, aimed straight for my heart. And in that instant, I understood this was not just a choice between saving my sister or myself. It was a choice between life and endless torment. As the darkness lunged towards me, I stood paralyzed, caught in the grip of despair and choice, the realization that whatever I did would alter the tether of reality irrevocably. And then, in that terrifying moment, the darkness whispered a single phrase that sent chills down my spine. You cannot save them both. And as I braced for impact, the world teetered on the edge of oblivion. The darkness collapsed around me, an inescapable cocoon of whispers and dread that echoed with the weight of despair. Panic surged through my veins as the icy claw drew closer, its jagged edges gleaming in the dim light. My heart raced furiously, caught between the instinct to flee and the need to save. In that ill-fated moment, my vision blurred. Everything around Meth's spectral figures, the jagged claw, the deafening silence began to warp and sway, like a canvas in the hands of a mad artist. The whispers escalated into a tempest, urging me, spinning tales of failure and regret, all coalescing into a singular purpose: to devour what remained of my resolve. That I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the horrors to retreat, recalling the warmth of my sister's familiar memory bright enough to illuminate the crushing darkness. Layer by layer, the shape looming over me peeled back, fraying at the edges as I clutched onto that fleeting memory. Then, a flicker, a glimpse of an alternate choice. Maybe if I surrendered, if I offered myself as the sacrifice, perhaps that would be enough to untether her from the suffocating grip of the shadows. "I won't let you take her," I cried, a defiant scream stark against the cacophony of pain. "Take me instead." In reply, the maw of shadows twisted into a grotesque grin, delighted by my offering. But it surged forward, hungry for my flesh rather than my soul. The air thickened, drumming against my chest like an impending storm. Retaliation coursed through me, flooding my limbs with newfound strength. I reached inside, grasping the core of my being, the deepest thread woven through the fabric of despair, the bond of sisterhood that once pulsed with life. I tore through the mooring lines of grief, weaving them into a lasso of hope meant to capture my sister's presence above the roiling chaos. The air thickened, electric with possibility, as I began to unravel my own misery, casting it outward like flares in the dark. The shadows recoiled, burnished tendrils striking at the unyielding light I summoned from my heart. Through the curtain of darkness, I reached for her, clawing through the sinister mass until I could see her, caught in a web of intangible torment, her eyes wide with terror. "Hold on," I screamed, desperation pouring from my lips like liquid despair. I envisioned her escaping, bursting through the surface of this inky terror. But before either of us could conceive escape, another echo sang out, this one not of anguish, but of laughter, rich and taunting, a cold chill lacing every syllable. "Take her instead," the voice crooned, slithering like smoke around my resolve. "She is yours to sacrifice, a mere morsel for your salvation." The world warped again, and I was enveloped in a memory of false tapestry where my sister's laughter rang out, vibrant and comforting, intertwined with shadows that beckoned me closer. Images of our youth twisted through dreams long faded, eternal bonds adorned in fragments of joy. But they quickly darkened, revealing the flashes of choices unmade, of paths diverged that led to this very moment. Then the laughter transitioned into piercing cries, a sickening blend of torment as the dark entity consumed flashes of our past, turning cherished moments into memories of despair, twisting what we had shared into a treacherous shroud. Each abyssal groan from the shadows sent tremors through my soul, solidifying one agonizing truth: if I chose to save her, it would drown me in her absence. The world spiraled, weakening my grip on reality. No, I yelled, shaking my head violently against the chains of the memories that threatened to drag me under. "I won't let you do this." I felt my power surging, fueled by the bond of love, but the specters only cackled, dancing closer, coaxing from the pit of darkness. Suddenly, a vision erupted before me, a fractured mirror reflecting my own despair. I saw myself gray, hollowed out, consumed by the shadows, while she floated further away, her vibrant spirit dimming against the oncoming storm. "No," I rasped. "You'll only be free if I—" But even as I uttered those words, doubt clawed at my mind. The shadows merged, pulsated, taking form until they became a rising tide, a cloak forcing me to submit to their darkness. The cold atmosphere crackled with impending dread, and just as I braced myself for the choice, a burst of feral energy surged from my Korea, wolf forged in desperation. I screamed out, conjuring the memories of our shared laughter, the warmth of our childhood, the moments stolen by darkness. As I reached toward my sister, something shifted. The shadows flinched, as if my light revealed a vulnerability they were desperate to hide. In that fleeting, electric heartbeat, the dark claw paused inches from my heart. The air shimmered, the ground trembled, and suddenly I felt her pulling back, not away from me, but drawn toward the light radiating from my desperate invocation. "Join us!" The shadows screamed, trembling with wrath, but as I pushed forward, the sinister presence morphed, leeching onto my fears, summoning nightmares of the deep, manifesting into visions of my sister enveloped in darkness, a puppet strung tight by the threads of despair. And then, I witnessed something beyond comprehension. Cries of the forsaken surged forth, calling her name. My sister's visage flickered, torn between realms. The entity dropped its facade, a twisted mockery of her laughter clawing toward my own soul. You think you can save her? You're already lost. In that horrid instant, a blinding light enveloped me, but it was not joy. It was rage, fear, and desperation for survival. And just as the light reached its zenith, everything turned to deliberate chaos. The shadows surged forward, intertwining, stretching to rupture the fragile barrier between us. A horrible amalgamation of anguish and power. The darkness pulsed with malevolence, and an unfamiliar roar echoed through the void, ripping through my frail sanity. You're left with only one choice. Let go, and take the plunge, no? Was all I could think, but before I could react, the darkness exploded, consuming all light, and the echoes of my sister's taunting voice pierced through the shards of silence. Choose now. The rift tore wider, dragging me closer, a chasm of despair yawning open at my feet. And as all hope flickered and blazed like a dying star, I felt my resolve waver, cementing my fate. And then, as I prepared to face my own untimely demise, the suffocating void around us echoed an impossible truth. We've already chosen for you. And within that final breath of hope, I lost sight of her completely, the shadows enveloping me before I could even scream. I awoke screaming, the echoes of despair still crackling through my mind like shards of glass. My voice trembled in the suffocating air, muffled by the overwhelming weight of realization. I was back in my living room, the dim light flickering like a dying ember. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage, unwilling to accept the reality that I had returned but the darkness had followed. I felt different, a cold void edging into my being, infused with a grim awareness of what I had escaped yet no longer. The reflection of my own past danced before me, flickering in shadows that twisted and writhed from the corners as if my very doubts had carved them into existence. My phone lay beside me, its screen invitingly lit, and dread pooled in my gut when I saw it. A notification glowed ominously. You're next. Live now. A breath caught in my throat as I grasped the device, the unmistakable light rippling with a familiar, malevolent pull that tugged at my core. I hesitated, knowing the horror that awaited, every ounce of sanity screaming at me to turn away. But deep down, another part of me yearned, driven by a morbid curiosity to uncover the truth hidden beyond the door. As if compelled by an unseen force, I pressed the notification, plunging into a black hole of darkness, not simply a digitized stream, but a living archive of anguish beckoning to me, inviting me to stare into the abyss of my own making. The laughter erupted, a twisted symphony of sinister delight that wailed gleefully, wrapping around me tightly until I could taste the salt of my own tears mixed with raw, bitter fear. Then came the images, faces caught mid-scream, their eyes wide as the shadows deepened, revealing each soul trapped in a moment of despair, pulsating with an insatiable need for recognition. My gut wrenched. They were all there, the countless victims, the lost souls crying out for release from the horror of what I had unleashed. Do you see? A voice crooned, melting through the veil of static. It echoed familiar yet distorted, the face melting into a grotesque blend of loved one's long-lost me sister's visage twisted into an unfathomable mask of despair. They are waiting for you. This is your eternal theater, a stage built of every choice you never made. It felt as though my heart had been pulled from my chest and laid bare in front of me, the weight of every moment of inaction crushing down on my soul. My hands trembled, sweaty against the smooth surface of the phone, mirroring the chaos swirling in the periphery of my mind. I involuntarily clenched the device tighter, eyes burning with rage and despair. No, I howled into the void, the sound echoing off the walls and pooling into hollow silence. But in that silence, it fed no longer a darkness trapped within the screen, but a living, breathing horror infused with my fears and regrets. It fed hungrily on the atmosphere, swirling around me, drowning me in a cacophony of lifeless echoes. You were the one who let us down. They all hissed in twisted harmony, their voices wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. Every face, Every screamdo you think you have escaped, you open the door. And then, in a heartbeat, everything froze, stark still. I trembled as I felt the weight of their collective gaze sweep over me, piercing into the very soul of my being, a haunting reminder of my own cowardice. They had fed on my fear, and I was now as much a part of their torment as I had been an unwilling spectator. Could I still save them? Or have I come to claim my own seat in this never-ending horror show? Just as it settled into my core, just when I began to believe there was no escape, a sudden jolt surged through me, awakening the dormant fire I thought had faded. Rage coursed through my veins, igniting recognition like an unwelcome thunderclap. "I will not be a prisoner of your pain," I screamed, a primal roar yearning for freedom and vengeance that I stared into the darkness pooling before me, internally wrestling the comprehension that they needed me just as much as I once thought I had needed them, lost on this journey to find the truth. "You think you can keep me here? No. I will shatter this cycle." Suddenly, I felt the room tremble, the air vibrating as shadows coiled tighter around me. An anguished wail erupted as the memories surged, twisting into a grotesquely beautiful dance of light and shadow. "Me, sister," my friends brought forth from the depths, but now contorted with fury, their eyes gleaming with unholy satisfaction. "Join us, or be lost forever," they chanted wickedly, a symphony of agony threatening to drown out my will. But before they could unleash their madness upon me, I drew from the fire of my bonda a reminder of every loving word, every shared moment of joy rippling through the haze of despair. I fought back, igniting the power that lay dormant within me, channeling every ounce of hope into that very device. "Feed on this," I shouted defiantly, flinging every treasure of my heart against the encroaching darkness, a pure construct of love battling despair. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as they writhed like panicked serpents. Light surged from the heart of the phone, illuminating the void in brilliant colors, reforming shattered memories into kaleidoscopic fragments of joy. I pushed against the darkness, conjuring the laughter of my sister, her voice crystalline as I echoed, "I won't let you take them away from me. I will rewrite this." With a violent blast, the shadows ruptured, scattering like mist on the cusp of dawn. The laughter transformed into howls of frustration, retreating into the dark corners, receding from the light I unleashed. No longer a backdrop, I became the architect orchestrating the shift from despair toward hope. I refused to become a captive. But suddenly, what I thought was liberation twisted once more. In the air came the unmistakable scent of déjà vu, with creeping realization that darkness never truly dissipates. And just as I thought I had triumphed, a chilling whisper coiled around my heart, threading through every hardened sinew. But what if it never really ends? As shadows pooled beneath me, I staggered back, breath hitching wildly in my throat. The surroundings blurred, shapes melting back into focus. And while I had eluded the immediate threat, I felt an encroaching embrace, not the touch of anguish, but an awakening dread, a growing, insatiable hunger that echoed not just from the void, but also from the glowing screen that had called me back. I stepped away, heart hammering against my ribs, but I knew the truth. The cycle, the horror that would never relent, had merely taken a different form. I was still trapped, still a puppet ensnared in the threads of an unholy performance. And as the echoes of laughter returned, splintering like ice upon stone, I braced for the inevitable die-in and agonizing harmony. The final notification pulsed on my phone, its words seeping into the marrow of my bones. "Join the next live stream where you will witness the destruction of your soul." As the jagged laughter filled the room once more, I knew the infinite darkness still lingered, waiting for its next show, a haunting promise of a dreadful end leading not to salvation, but to an eternity of confusion and despair, an everlasting torment echoing through the abyss. And as the last remnants of light faded, one simple and chilling thought hovered on the precipice of consciousness. This cycle will never end. I am cursed to watch it unfold.